His career is basically divided before Red Sonja and after Red Sonja. He created a show and took that show on the road with all these cosplayers, and he recreated a bit of the show in the Savage Sword of Conan comic with. So these are all Red Sonja cosplayers. And one of these, the last one here, this is Wendy Pini, who created ElfQuest.
Oh wow!
This is him cosplaying with Linda Barrel.
Wow.
Which, apparently Stan Lee did not like stuff like this.
What?
There is a language in comics for creating a montage, I think. And I don't know if this is universally accepted, but this right here is a prime example. Yeah, in those early interviews, he's very cordial. He's always positive about all his collaborators and coworkers. But yeah, in the 2019 interview, he seems gloves off. He's like 90 years old at that point.
Hey everyone, welcome to Ink Scribes, the comics podcast where we talk about the art and craft of comics. I'm Colin Singh, and I'm joined by my co-hosts Eric Zawadzki and Taylor Stauft. The three of us are comic artists of varying levels. This coming from the guy who's at the bottom. We are all lifelong comics fans, and we love talking about the art and craft of comics. So today we're going to be talking about Frank Thorne. He is probably one of the most underappreciated comic legends of the comics industry. He has a career spanning not just for comic books, but also newspaper strips, commercial work, and we're going to be looking at pretty much everything, but namely Red Sonja.
Yeah, that's all I really know him from too. Is knew of his Red Sonja work. Nothing much else though.
Yeah, pretty much me too. I mean, I did grow up knowing who he was, but outside of Red Sonja, his name being synonymous with Red Sonja, I'm not really too familiar with his outside work from that.
To be honest, I only really discovered him like several years ago. Actually, I was in a comic shop and they had this like a facsimile edition, and I flipped through it and just thought I mean, I wasn't a fan of the color, but I thought the artwork was amazing. And then from there, I just dove right in to learn as much as possible. Like a year later, I ended up buying this Ribbit hardcover. And yeah, I looked into all his Red Sonja stuff and I just fell in love.
Ribbit's one of those things that I've heard about, but I would have never connected with him. It's just one of those it's one of those legendary things of the 1980s.
Yeah, I mean, it never really it wasn't successful, and it kind of disappeared. I think there's only like 1,000 of these hardcovers, just because yeah, there isn't a big market for this stuff. He is kind of a forgotten, maybe not forgotten, an underappreciated legend. But yeah, with this episode, I am going to try to go through about 70 years of his entire career in hopefully under a half hour. Because yeah, I tend to get obsessed, and I want to know everything about these creators when I discover them. So yeah.
You're going to span you're going to span his career for the first half hour, and then we're going to go more in depth into Red Sonja.
Yeah, so it'll be two parts. So
okay.
I have a PDF. I compiled a bunch of images. I scoured the internet and I tried to be thorough without getting too detailed, because I got to do this in a timely manner. But yeah, I compiled a PDF. We'll go through that in the first part, and then in the other half, fortunately, on the Kindle app, they have artist editions of Red Sonja. So that's the only artist editions you can find on the Kindle app are these Red Sonjas, and they are gorgeous. So we'll look a little bit at those.
Cool.
Starting off with this image, this is an image of all the characters he's primarily associated with. I'm not. This might be a commission, or it might be just something he did for fun. I'm not entirely sure what this was made for, but this is made up of creator-owned stuff, and also there's some DC characters in here. We've got Sergeant Rock in the background there, and yeah, Red Sonja and Gita of Alazar, among various other stuff.
Is that the other metal bikini babe?
Yeah, that's the blonde Red Sonja, basically. Like when he went creator-owned, he just basically just created a blonde Red Sonja, and it's a straight-up porn comic.
This feels very en français. Is this like indicative of most of his work?
Yeah, well, I mean, his stuff evolves, which
Okay.
yeah, let's dive in. So he was born in 1930, and he died a couple years ago in 2021. He lived to be about 91 years old.
It's a good
So he
age.
he had a very long career.
Mm.
And his career is basically divided from before Red Sonja and after Red Sonja. Everything before Sonja didn't really mean much to him. He basically had a family to support and he had bills to pay, and that's what he saw drawing as. But yeah, the stuff after Red Sonja actually really meant a lot to him.
Oh, that's interesting.
So yeah, during in his like first year of art school, which I think he was like 18 at the time, he managed to get work at Standard Comics. So he did a bunch of romance stories. Yeah, in an interview I read, he said that he did an 8-page story in this intimate love comic called My Selfish Heart. So this is what his art looked like. He was very influenced by Alex Raymond, known for Flash Gordon, and Hal Foster, known for Prince Valiant.
Man, you can actually. I don't know much about romance comics, but I'm just gonna say this is a real step above the romance comics I've seen. This is surprisingly good.
Yeah, I mean, actually, he says that he was just straight up swiping
Yes.
Alex Raymond back then. So I think he actually had a couple of conversations with the master Alex Raymond, and yeah, it did not go well. He basically he straight up front apologized for swiping his work and said how much he revered him, and yeah, Alex Raymond basically did not treat him well.
Oof. That's a shame.
I think everybody was swiping him around. Then it was very common. So yeah, just another punk kid comes up to you saying, "Sorry, I've been swiping your work," and yeah.
Flash Gordon was huge. It was probably one of the biggest strips at that time.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
for a long time too. And his name, his style was synonymous with that specific strip, right? So he was like, I wouldn't call him the king of comics or anything, but he was definitely a big player in the comics industry at that time.
Yeah, and like a goal for other artists. Like, oh yeah, if I could get to that.
Yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
it's like each era, you know, after you get about 50, 60 years later, there's only like 2 or 3 artists you end up talking about.
Yeah.
Which I think about that, like nowadays, who are the 2 artists that will still be talking about in like 70 years? Like,
Ooh, good question.
okay, so yeah, he ended up getting. It was 1952. He was about 22 years old, and he walked into King Features, which was a newspaper strip syndicate, and he handed his portfolio, and he got a job, which is just so impressive for a 22-year-old.
That is.
Yeah, and this is like, they say he did his career backwards, because this was artists at this time. They toiled away on lowly comic books, and they all dreamed of working on a syndicated strip.
Yeah.
And he got it right away. He got it at age 22.
Was it Perry Mason that he got too?
Yeah, he got to do the Perry Mason strip, which that strip was still going on only because William Randolph Hearst was friends with the creator of Perry Mason. And
sounds right.
Yeah, so Frank Thorne gets this gig, and then a year later, William Randolph Hearst dies, and whoever takes over for him we don't need this anymore. It was only around because he was friends with Hearst. So yeah, he was out of a job, but he was so relieved when the strip got canceled. Because it was just so much work. He was getting paid like $350 a week, which was so much money back in like 1952.
That's 1952 money?
Yeah, he like bought a house and like a brand new Chevy convertible with all that money.
Wow.
Yeah. So a newspaper strip is like something that every artist wants, because it's got wide circulation. And you don't have to like worry about hunting down gigs anymore. It's like steady, respectable work. But it is just so much work. So he had to do 7 daily strips, and a Color Sunday strip. So I have an example here. We have 2 strips on the left, and then here's a color strip on the right. And yeah, he basically he had to hand the pages in every Friday. He lived in New Jersey, and I think he had to drive to New York to hand the pages in every Friday. And he said from Wednesday to Friday he did not sleep leading up to the deadline. Just like his wife would drive him into New York, and he'd sleep in the car, and that was the first sleep he got in like days.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was like a dream job, and it was hell.
Did he drink or anything like that? Did he have any vices like some of the other guys of that time, or any age really?
I mean, a lot of guys did.
Yeah, well, he's an interesting guy because we're gonna get into his later career, and he it's easy to pigeonhole somebody and like peg him as a type, but he was not like all the other guys that like. All those guys you speak of, they all had 4 wives throughout their entire lives, and they all drank.
Yeah.
He had 1 wife. He married her at age 18, and they died like 6 or 7 hours apart in 2021.
What?
And that was the only woman he was ever with. He describes himself as a family man. She was a churchgoer, and he not so much, but they loved each other. So yeah, I can't speak much to his drinking, but he was not like any of those other guys.
No, I trust he would have been a good old boy if that's the case.
Which, considering how the last half of his career went, he does not seem like a good old boy. But like people are complicated. People are interesting. You can't fully peg them. So yeah, this strip he only worked for like a year, and he vowed never to do a comic strip again because he likes living his life and he wants to spend time with his family, and it's just no way to live, right?
Wow.
Yeah, dream come true, right?
Yep.
So next up in 1953, hold on a second, I gotta keep this cat out. All this meows. Go to sleep.
Colin, you have me thinking about this because, like, yeah, how much did he drink? I assume everybody in the 50s, liquor and tobacco, that's part of their diet. That's part of their diet.
Especially smoking to be productive, and liquor to take the edge off after you've done like 16 hours straight or whatever the case may be, right?
Yeah, because they had a pretty high bar to clear for alcoholism back then.
I mean, was alcoholism even a name? Was it a thing back then?
It did, yeah. But it was the sort of thing that was like, oh, well, I guess if you're too weak to hold your liquor or too weak to stay, continent, I guess, it was seen as a, yeah, it wasn't, there wasn't a great atmosphere for it, for admitting.
Okay. So we get to 1953, and this was about 4 to 5 years. He worked at Dell Comics, doing stuff like the Flash Gordon comic book, Jungle Jim, Green Hornet, Tom Corbett's Space Cadet. So yeah, this first page here is a Green Hornet comic, and then yeah, we have the Tom Corbett, and this was a significant pay cut. He was only making a third of what he was making on Perry Mason.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but because of his experience on Perry Mason, in which he had to do everything, he had everything but the writing. He had to letter it, and he had to do the Color Sunday strip. He had all these skills that all the other professional artists at Dell did not have. So unlike most of those guys, he penciled, inked, lettered, he colored most of his jobs.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it was like trial by fire at age 22. Earned him all these skills that paid off later in life.
No better time.
Was he doing the whole page and handing in a whole completed page and still being paid only a third of what he was making on the strip?
Yeah, I believe so. That's what he said in interviews. It's just those newspapers, those syndicates, they paid really well. I mean, they had like a mass circulation for all those strips, and but these were probably had a big print run. All these comics had print runs as well, but yeah, these were like sweatshops basically.
Yeah,
that's right.
These weren't like prime gigs. There's a kind of blue collar aspect to early comics. A lot of these were like people loved drawing, but they weren't really. I don't know. They like these weren't passion projects for for these artists. This was like commercial art.
Yeah.
I gotta say, once again, looks great. Like this is so much better than I would have thought you'd see on a Dell comic.
Yeah, it's really high quality stuff.
Yeah.
Like he, but again, at this time he was swiping Alex Raymond stuff. Still,
Well, oh, okay. Still, well.
Yeah, I mean it's you get stuck in a routine, and like this is just how it's done. But in 1957, from 57 to 62, he returned to daily strips, which he vowed he would never do. This time he was at the Lefebvre Syndicate, and it was a strip called Guy Bennett. And yeah, it was basically a poor man's Rex Morgan, MD.
Oh.
Yeah, he took over for another artist, and yeah, he did it for about 6 to 7 years. So he swore he would never do a syndicated strip again, but he found it was fine because he was actually getting faster and he was developing his own style.
This looks less complicated too, like just
yeah. I guess he was like
everyday
figuring it out.
Yeah.
If you have to meet deadlines, which you have to meet deadlines to work in the industry, you just have to figure out what steps you need to bring your style in or your techniques in order to get the job done on time.
Yeah.
And interestingly, in interviews, he said that over the span of 2 years, he moved from swiping Alex Raymond to copying photographs, and then finally to freehand drawing.
Good for him.
Yeah, by the time the 60s arrived, he was drawing completely freehand, and he couldn't even use photographs because it would hold him back. So yeah, there was a lot of growth. Like this is a daily strip. This was a daily strip plus the Sunday strip, but actually the Sunday color, I think they canceled after about 6 months, which gave him extra time to do side illustration gigs and to actually spend time with his family. So his second stint with the newspaper strips was significantly better. By 1960, there were only 20 newspapers carrying this strip. So I mean, it was on life support, and
so it was not popular. Wow.
Yeah, and there were so many attempts to save it. Like they changed the writer. They would just have a series of doctors writing this.
Oh wow.
And they're, I guess finally they're like, oh, let's just change the name to Dr. Duncan. It was like Dr. Douglas Duncan or something, and that basically killed the strip.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Especially if another newspaper can be like, but we already got Rex Morgan, so what do we need?
Yeah,
Your doctor
yeah, like yeah, it was just a ripoff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So interestingly, Thorne got to write the last 6 months of the strip, which was his first chance of writing, and it made him hungry to do more of it. But he never really got the opportunity until he went solo, until he went independent.
Nice.
But yeah, so he spent a couple of years after that just doing illustration work, and then he slowly drifted back to comics. And then from there, he went back to Dell, which was I'm not sure. There's like some sort of weird relationship between Dell, Gold Key, and Western.
Yeah, the printing facility.
Oh, was that a printing facility?
I thought Western was like it had something to do with they were owned by. Yeah, you're right. There's some kind of weird co-ownership thing going on.
Well, I might be wrong, but I think there was like one of them was a studio that Dell farmed out to, and then that Mighty Western might have been a studio that like Dell had all these titles and they farmed out to Mighty Western, and then Mighty Western went independent and created Gold Key. So they were at once united but then separated. But I might have some of those details wrong, but there's some sort of a messiness with that. At any rate, these he did these movie adaptations, and they say Dell. So
no, you're right. There's the early the early post-war comics companies could be and were often just like a gigantic shell game of, well, I own this, but this owns part of that, and a percentage of this is held by a holding company, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and it was just about pumping out as much product to the stands as you could. It's just like,
Yeah.
oh, well, I have the Disney license. Okay, so let's adapt 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and yeah, just like movie adaptations and yeah, you just let's get that hard-earned cash from those kids. So yeah, he worked on Mighty Samson, Smelly Sam, these movie adaptations like Twilight Zone comics, Boris Karloff.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, just a lot of stuff. And he was kind of trapped in the 6-panel grid. He was expected to keep things basic and just do nothing fancy. Just tell the story.
Nothing wrong with a 6-panel grid, though.
Yeah,
You
however,
can do a lot
if
still.
you can, but like 6, 7, 8 years of that, a decade of that, it can be a little
Yeah, as an
stifling.
artist, you can get bored. I'm just saying there's still a lot. There's a lot that you can do still in 6 panels.
Yeah. So yeah, he was getting paid $35 a page to do this stuff.
For 22 pages? Was it 22 back then?
I think it might have been like 24 pages, but I'm not sure. And they didn't return any of the original art back. He always wondered
this
what
is that
happened to
era,
it.
Yeah.
I think it was just like thrown out.
Yeah, it was often given as like souvenirs to people who visited, or they'd scribble stuff on the back or cut it up for whatever they needed. It was considered done once it
Yeah,
went.
even the artists at the time, like they wouldn't have wanted the art back. It was just
Yeah.
like you know they were pumping out so much pages and they were seen as worthless.
Yeah,
So
there's no nerds like us being like, oh yeah, give me that original art.
so yeah, 1968 comes and he ends up working at the top publisher of the 1960s, DC Comics.
National
Although
Comics.
yeah, around then Marvel was gaining on them, but yeah, in the 60s they were still the top publisher. Yeah, so he didn't want to work on superheroes. He's not into superheroes, so that limited him to the historical books.
I feel like we can see shades of what's to come from just this cover.
Right? Yes, it's buxom woman at gunpoint.
Yeah, just
Yeah, everything
hard-faced.
everything to this point was just men. He was just drawing like male main characters and you know, men at war and historical stories.
Do you know the reason for his aversion to superheroes at the time?
I don't know. He just wasn't into it. Like guys like Don Heck, who was I think he was drawing like Iron Man around this time. Like he didn't like drawing superheroes, but he, you know, you need a paycheck, so you know, there weren't a lot of options back then.
I've heard that from a lot. Yeah, Buscema hated it too. They all seem to
he
like.
Preferred Conan.
Yeah, they just seem to like no superpowers, just people who are people.
Yeah.
Actually, in some of these interviews, I heard Frank Thorne tell a story about how Buscema didn't like Conan. Like it sounded like he didn't like drawing anything. It sounded like he
really. Don't tell me that, man.
Actually, I listened to multiple interviews, and there were a couple times where he talks about meeting with John Buscema, and he was asking them, like he was saying that John Buscema said he wanted to do like a correspondence art course program, and he was asking the interviewer, did that ever happen? And it's funny, one of the interviewers replied, no, I don't think so. But then I listened to another one where the interviewer replied, yeah, that actually did happen. So yeah, apparently he did John Buscema did a correspondence course way back when. Okay, so yeah, he was also hired to do this stuff because they thought he was working in a Joe Kubert style, which Joe Kubert was like running a lot of these. He was like editing these war books, and he was like synonymous with these war books.
Oh yeah,
but he was never directly influenced by Joe Kubert. It just sort of they just had very similar styles, and they became very close friends around this time.
Good man to have as a friend.
Yeah,
especially
and like he would visit the graduating class of the Joe Kubert School, basically in the 2000s and 2010s.
Dang, just another reason I should have gone.
Did you ever think of going to the Joe Kubert School?
I considered it, yeah, but I'm a wuss. Moving to the States to go to school, that sounds terrifying.
Oh man, that's the thing that held you back?
Yeah.
Oh no. Okay, so yeah, interestingly, so he was stuck in that 6-panel grid for a little while, but at DC he had a little more freedom, and he started to play around with the storytelling a little more, as you can see with these silhouettes at the bottom.
Yeah, and like drawing things across panel breaks, and yeah, he's definitely stretching out from what was expected from movie adaptations.
So yeah, he was most known for working on this comic Tomahawk, which I had never heard of before looking into all this stuff. But it was set during the Revolutionary War, and the character of Tomahawk was this frontier ranger. Yeah, he worked on that comic for a while, and I think sales were starting to go down, and so they realized that maybe kids don't want to read about this old man, so we'll change the title to Son of Tomahawk. Which was interesting because it was so Hawk Hawkins, son of Tomahawk, is a biracial character.
Whoa.
So yeah, he had his father, a white dude named Tomahawk, and then his mother was a Native American woman.
When is this again?
When is the comic came out in the 60s? This was during the Revolutionary War.
Sorry, yeah, like we're talking the late 60s, I think.
Yeah. So this would be like 68, 69. Maybe coming up. Actually, no, this might be moving. I think they changed it to Son of Tomahawk maybe in the early 70s.
Oh, okay.
Did it help sales at all to change it?
No. I think it only lasted like another 6 issues.
Yeah.
Actually, I might be wrong about that, but yeah, but he was getting a lot of he described he got a lot of son of books because he also got like Korak, son of Tarzan, and then later on he did like a Son of Dracula comic. But yeah, these pages are a lot of fun.
Dang. Yeah.
Playing with the double page spreads.
Ooh, that is cool.
And yeah, he wasn't so into the Tarzan. He didn't think he was a good fit for Tarzan. But the Tomahawk book he thought he was a really good fit for.
So is that just he was more of a Western guy than like a
jungle adventure?
Well, yeah.
And I guess there was more of a military vibe to the Tomahawk books, but yeah, I'm not entirely sure.
3 genres that were all really on their way out in the early 70s, just like across mediums.
Yeah, because we associate that with what, the early 1900s. This stuff.
Yeah. Jungle adventure, even westerns are really starting to wane in popular culture. They're just like, okay, yeah, I guess. How many times can you do this permutation?
Yeah, so here's a House of Mystery comic, and actually, so this becomes a kind of a signature move of his, this L-shaped panel, which I really love. Nobody else does this. He's the only one.
Yeah, I noticed it in the artist editions.
Yeah. There's when we get to that, it's going to be a lot of fun because he does that a lot, and I like that he's got his signature move that like nobody else does. You don't get a lot of that in comics. You get a lot of like a crossover with things, but like who else is doing L-shaped panels? And look at this. Wow. This is a really fun page with the arrows coming down like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So he was really stretching his wings by the 70s, which, if he started in 48, so he's about 35 years in.
Yeah.
35 years experience. Okay, so yeah, he did some work around 1974 for Dark Circle Comics, which was like an imprint of Archie. This was them trying to like move into like superheroes and sword and sorcery and other stuff. Which that didn't last too long, but it's really good work still.
That Comics Code Authority loosening up. Gotta try to move into those spaces.
Yeah, do you think is that the story behind Dark Circle Comics?
I think so. Yeah, just because it's because as I understand it, the Comics Code Authority loosens up when they push back on Marv Wolfman's name in a comic. Like you can't put Wolfman.
Wolfman.
And Marvel pushing back saying that's the man's name. Like we can't not put it in there, and it led to a reevaluation. So you could get spooky stuff again, and I could see. I think that's it started pushing stuff like military and westerns out, especially in comics.
Wow, we can thank Marv Wolfman for that, eh?
I think for a big part of it, yeah.
That's pretty funny.
There's also that drug issue of Spider-Man too. So
Right, yes. Yeah. Where drugs are bad. You can't even say drugs are bad.
yeah.
So do you guys know about much about Atlas Seaboard?
I
No.
do, yeah.
Which is only around for a couple of years.
It's not, yeah, it doesn't go well, as if I recall. I don't know much about it, but it's the result of Martin Goodman trying to claw back the success of Marvel after he sold Marvel, right?
Yeah, he basically sold Marvel, and I guess what was it? Some sort of chemical company bought Marvel.
Perfect Filming Chemical, yeah.
Yeah, and they were buying basically Marvel and Stan Lee, and
Yeah.
that was where over the course of the '60s, I guess Stan Lee became bigger than Martin Goodman in some ways. Where for decades, Stan Lee was just this little underling, and yeah, Martin Goodman sold Marvel Comics, and then I guess he, for some reason, wanted to recreate success or something, and he hired Larry Lieber, Stanley's brother, to run it.
I want to
So
say it was his son was also involved in that. Like, how could
right,
you have thrown
yes.
it away, man? Dad, it was look what we could have had. Something like that.
And I mean, they created some, actually they had some really good talent. They created some interesting material, but yeah, it crashed and burned after a couple of years. It didn't turn out well.
No. I love
So
the
Martin Goodman, he created Atlas Comics after he had sold Marvel, right?
Well, interestingly, like Atlas was the original name of Marvel Comics, right? So they sold
I
Marvel
get
Comics,
that.
but got to keep that name, and so
Yeah.
that was a
So
interesting part of it, is the original name of Marvel.
which is not a bad idea, because this is around the time that you start getting actual collectors who would probably have remembered, oh yeah, Atlas Comics, I remember that. Maybe not connecting it to Marvel. That's kind of a discovery through paperwork, I think. But I could definitely see trying to play into a group of fans as vaguely remembering Atlas Comics from I want to say it's the 50s, mid 50s.
Yeah. Actually, that's an interesting element. I wonder if that was. I hadn't thought of that. I wonder if that was part of the calculation of creating it. But because there was comic stores were starting to open up around this time, right?
Yeah, and conventions and like fan publications. That's where I want to say Roy Thomas is like a good example of a guy who just kept being a comics fan from like 8 to 20 something, and he just he really liked comics and kept a back issues, which was odd at the time because they were considered very disposable.
Yeah, they always just
So-
ended up in the garbage.
So then Martin Goodman, did he recruit Frank Thorne to take on a bunch of titles for Atlas, or?
I think it might have been Larry Lieber who got Frank Thorne. Like Martin Goodman didn't know comics. He was, it was like a magazine empire, and comics were the lowest rung of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I'm not entirely sure. I do think it was Larry Lieber, which Frank Thorne speaks well of, but likes to comment that both siblings just they never had hair. And one day Stanley showed up with hair.
Roasted.
So this was that Son of Dracula book. This is one of the first comics that really clicked for him, apparently. Which I think there were there's a lot of scenes with women in here. So yeah, every character, like all his stuff had male lead characters up until this point, because finally we get to Red Sonja, which this is when his career really takes off. This is when he becomes a name in comics, and everything changes after this.
I think it's these covers that I was really aware of Frank Thorne from. I hadn't read them, but the covers are eye-catching, to say the least.
Yes, well, and this cover in particular, this is a play on the famous Conan image by Frank Frazetta.
Right.
Which is very cool. Okay, so yeah, he got hired by Archie Goodwin, and Archie Goodwin was the editor in chief. I think he originally thought he was hired by Roy Thomas, but he found out later on that it was Archie Goodwin.
They were switching through EICs so quick in that time.
Yeah, like Roy Thomas was an editor in chief, like earlier than that, and throughout the 70s, it was just a mess. It was not until Jim Shooter came in, and Jim Shooter like basically looked at all the hippies and basically cleaned it all up and started. The comics started coming out on time, and
no more reprints.
My kind of guy.
Well, there was a lot of anger at the square guy, like cracking the whip, but everything started running a lot better.
And he was a kid.
Yeah, but so tall, so so I guess that made up for it a little bit. But yeah, so it started off in Marvel Feature. They didn't want to give Red Sonja her own book right away. Marvel Feature was just going to be, Red Sonja was going to get one issue basically, and then they'd have somebody else in the second issue. But and that's why Dick Giordano drew the first issue, and Roy Thomas wrote the first issue, and both of them didn't have time to do a regular book, but they decided to keep Red Sonja as Marvel Feature regular, and so they needed to find somebody else, and they got Frank Thorne to draw it and Bruce Jones to write it, and it turned out to be a sales success, so much so that they got Red Sonja to get her own first issue.
Hell yeah.
And basically, Frank Thorne's run is about 18 issues. And then he did 2 black and white Savage Sword of Conan shorts.
Nice.
And he basically kept most of the original art for most of his life. But interestingly, back then, the writers got to keep 2 pages of everything, which is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
But we can thank the existence of these artist editions based on him keeping most of the pages. So in an interview, he basically says he based Red Sonja off this porn star, Lisa DeLiu. I don't know how to pronounce it, but
Family Man.
yeah, he was really into that stuff. So this was the first Marvel heroine to go past 4 issues. Like most of them, like the Cat and Shanna the She-Devil, did not last. Oh my God, Leia, cut it out! Ugh, get off me. Okay. Okay, so yeah, it started off with Bruce Jones writing, and he wrote all the Marvel Feature Presents ones, which is about 6 issues, except the last one because it crossed over with Conan. So Roy Thomas did that one, and then the Red Sonja ones were basically written by Clara Noto, but Roy Thomas gets a little bit of credit, like co-writing with her on some of them. But for the most part, he was just the editor.
Doing a bit of punch up.
Yeah, she was like she lived in Hollywood, and I think she was like maybe she was a film editor, but she was also trying to get into screenplays. But here's a bunch of roughs. This is from their crossover.
Yeah, love seeing process stuff.
Yeah, it's fun to see how he decided to move her body to shift it away. And he also shifted like Conan's head up. So yeah, it's interesting seeing those little decisions.
You know what though, if you go back, I do prefer the original version in that. I think it was an editorial choice. They said, can you at least show more of their face?
Yeah.
Whoever the editor was at the time.
Maybe you might be onto something. Yeah.
If it's a Superman book, you got to see Superman's face on the cover, right? Like if he's kind of being blown away or his hand's in the way, they're going to make you redraw it.
But you're right, Colin. It is the stronger. It feels like there's more. I don't know, power, something.
You should have kept the original here, I think.
Yeah, but I mean, it's also tough because like there's always going to be more energy in the roughs.
That's true.
You always with every step of the process, you lose a bit of energy. So it's tough to tell. Like maybe if this version was inked, it wouldn't work. But I would agree, Conan definitely looks a lot better.
Yeah.
So he did a whole bunch of roughs for the first issue.
Just the cover?
Sorry, the first issue cover. And Yeah, it's interesting to see that. And like, yeah, these were sold on Heritage several years ago. I think Frank Thorne himself sold it through Heritage auctions.
Good for him.
Yeah, good
I'm
for
glad
him, yeah.
he sold them.
Yeah, so many stories of people selling their pages for $300, and then 30 years later they're sold
Yeah.
for like $30,000.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was very smart of him. Yeah, I love this first page. This is from Red Sonja #1. So it's great to see the there was a Heritage auction where it was every single rough from the first issue, which was very cool to see.
Oof. Yeah.
Like, yeah, I love this. Is one of my favorite pages of the first issue of Red Sonja as well. This
That's great.
Montage
Yeah.
page. And he didn't color the Marvel Features issues, but he did get to color the Red Sonja issues. So this was this was one of his color guides.
This is the first time I'm seeing what it looked like what it would have looked like going into production. Huh.
What
Yeah,
year is this?
so,
Eric?
yeah,
What
he
year was Red
uses
Sonja?
this was like what was it? 77 to 79, I believe. There was 18 issues, but it was bi-monthly. It was every 2 months. So
I'm gonna say it again. This is another P. Craig Russell like kind of look. We gotta do a P. Craig episode because I've been noticing this a lot around the 70s and 80s era too. It's rubbing off on him. Either it's rubbing off on him or he's rubbing off on others, I would say. Well, in this case, I think Frank Thorne would be an influence on Russell.
yeah, I associate P. Craig Russell with the 80s, but I'm not too knowledgeable about his career, which means we'll have to do a deep dive on him one day.
Heck yeah.
But it's always fun looking at this stuff because he had 64 colors to work with, and so he uses markers to put it down and then like specifies which colors specifically to use.
Oh, cool.
And then it gets shipped off to basically some studio where people are cutting out sections of color and placing them on based on those 64 colors. But yeah, this is and this is probably faded a bit, but yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. I like the faded look. I love seeing old comics when they're on the newsprint.
Yeah,
It looks
definitely.
great.
I do too. I meant the color guide is faded a bit, but yeah, I mean that's markers for you. So this is basically the original art, and what this is a look at the newsprint. Oh man, you are just craving attention right now. And here we have the original, and here we have the recolor.
Oh, I see what you mean. Oh no.
Yeah.
Why would
and yeah, well,
go back.
So to be fair, this was done by Dynamite in like 2005, I think. This was only like a year into Dynamite's existence. I think they were doing exclusively Army of Darkness comics up to this point, and then somehow they got the Red Sonja license, and they've had it for like 20 years now. But this was, I think digital coloring was probably still in its infancy. We were only about like, 6 or 7 years into it being fully adopted by the entire comic industry. And I mean, yeah, it's not great. He was actually like, Frank Thorne is very public about his hatred for this recolor. And also like the line work was reproduced very poorly.
Yes.
Like I have this, and like
it looks very
yeah, the line work is not good, which like it wasn't until about 5 or 6 years after this that they got to scan all his original art to create those art editions. So they have all or most of the original pages scanned, so there is the capability of recoloring it properly with great line work and doing a good job. But unfortunately, they're sticking with this 2005 recolor because they just released an omnibus collection of all this stuff like a couple years ago, and it's still using this terrible recolor.
That's a shame. I'd rather they like printed on yellow tinted paper, just the original colors.
Yeah.
Like
I would definitely buy that, but I'm not gonna buy this.
Tragic, man.
And somebody got paid to do this, and they were probably it was 2005. They were probably new to coloring. I don't know who recolored this. I hope they've gotten better. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's there's probably if it's not new, there's probably still a not a lot of people who know how to do it and do it well.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't want to fault that person too much.
Yeah.
Maybe they've improved quite a bit, but I don't know. I just hate the rendering on the hair. I just
Get
hate
that
it so
money.
much. Frank Thorne has mentioned it a couple of times in interviews about how angry he is, and they just butchered his work. And he says that it's not done by somebody who knows how to draw because they don't know how to model the figure.
Mm.
Yeah, he says it's just dreadful.
Dreadful.
So yeah, around the time of the first Red Sonja comic, there was so much excitement for the character that there was a SonjaCon advertised in the first issue of Red Sonja.
Hell yeah.
And that was like the first convention that was purely devoted to one character, which we get a lot of nowadays. Like there's a Spawn convention, I think.
There is?
Really?
Yeah, there's a bunch of like a solo character conventions.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, he and Roy Thomas went to this convention, and there was early cosplay. There were a lot of people there dressed as Red Sonja, and they got to judge a Red Sonja lookalike contest. And he saw this as a bit of a gold mine. So he had like an old church lady in town sew him up a wizard costume, and he created a show and took that show on the road with all these cosplayers, and he recreated a bit of the show in this sort of Savage Sword of Conan comic. So these are all Red Sonja cosplayers that he was on the road with for the Red Sonja and Wizard show.
Oh, cool.
And so he got their likenesses, and one of these, the last one here, this is Wendy Peeney, who created ElfQuest.
Oh, wow.
The one on the far right?
I believe that's her, yeah. She's the one who, like, as they were touring throughout the United States, the Sonja started dwindling more and more, and then she was the final one. Wendy Peeney was the last one. It all culminated in a San Diego show in 1978, and yeah, that's when by then it was just the two of them. You can find a YouTube video of that 1978 show, which it's very low quality, but it's still interesting. And yeah, after that they parted ways, and like it was a big thing. Like they would go from town to town, and they would be on TV. The news would come. They would be in the newspaper. The mayors would meet them. Like, wow. Yeah, it was a big thing. It was a wild time in their life. But I think by the time of that San Diego in 1978, Wendy Peeney basically said, "Yeah, I'm done," because she wanted to go create her own comic.
Well,
And he wanted to, like, he was in this big whirlwind, and he was experiencing all this fame, I guess, and he wanted to write his own comic. He had this Gita of Alazar character, which is basically a blonde Red Sonja that he wanted to do. And one of these is Linda Barrel, I believe, who was his muse, who ended up becoming the Gita cosplayer and actually cosplay a lot of his future characters. So, but he always said that Linda Barrel wasn't a good Red Sonja, but she was great as all the other characters. So yeah, so he ended up creating Gita of Alazar, something he got to create on his own. But first, let me go into how he left Sonja. So for this show, I read a couple of interviews. I read an interview from the late 80s and an interview from the late aughts. And I listened to an interview from 2019, about a year and a half before he died at age 91. That 2019 interview was on like a comics historians podcast, which those people are doing such great work. Like, I am so happy they got him on the record.
What is this podcast?
The Comics Historian podcast. They're just really knowledgeable, and they get these legends on, and they ask them all the right questions. Yeah, in those early interviews, he's very cordial. He's always positive about all his collaborators and coworkers. But yeah, in the 2019 interview, he seems gloves off. He's like 90 years old at that point. And all these people, he talked exclusively positively about, like Stan Lee and Roy Thomas and his agent, Hugh Hefner, like all these people, he had nothing but positive things to say in the early interviews. By the 2019 interview, he started being a little bit more honest. But there is some confusing elements because in a 2007 Comics Journal interview, he's quoted as saying that his style wasn't the Marvel visual style. I never heard that they were concerned that my style wasn't like the rest of the other guys. And he said, let the record show that I left the book voluntarily to go out on my own. Yeah, so I mean, it seemed like he really wanted to work on his first creator-owned book. He was ready to do Gita of Alazar. Yeah, it was just time for him. But in the 2019 interview, he says that the reason he left Sonja was because Stan Lee called him. So Stan Lee brought him into the office, and there was a Lee and a team of other Marvel people. They sat him down and they expressed concerns that Red Sonja was the only book that didn't look like a Marvel book. And they said, for the sake of consistency, why don't we give you an inker? And that was just a no-go for him, so he walked away. So I mean, it is interesting that there's sort of two different stories.
He's coming up on 90 in that 2019 episode.
Although if you listen to that interview, he is sharp.
Sure. The thing is Stan involved at all in the day-to-day comic publishing operations of 1979, 1980 Marvel?
He was in and out of the office.
Okay.
Basically, he would go back and forth between Marvel and like Los Angeles. But I mean, I think it's the kind of thing that like Stan Lee's coming, clean up everybody. Like
right. Yeah, Dad's coming home. Can't let him see what we've turned this house into.
Yeah, I've heard lots of stories. Like the reason that Jim Shooter got put in charge was because Stan Lee vouched for him. Like Stan Lee would like show up and basically teach him the ropes and everything. And yeah, so he was in and out of the office.
Okay.
And there would often be, he'd discover things that were going on while he was away. And what are you guys doing?
What's with all this acid around here? Good God.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. There was and yeah, there'd be stories of like because he would go out on the road and like fans would ask him questions about current Marvel continuity, and yeah, he didn't know a lot of that stuff, and he'd go back to the office and be like, "Who's this Howard the Duck character that all the kids like?" But yeah, in those early interviews, he's very cordial about Roy Thomas. But yeah, in the 2019 interview, he basically said that Roy Thomas wasn't the one that hired me. He says it was Archie Goodwin, and Roy Thomas considered me a third-rate artist, which he was very amused by the idea that Roy Thomas wrote all these. He wrote 3 introductions over the course of 3 artist editions, just raving about about Frank Thorne, where Frank Thorne was very pleased by, he thought I was a third-rate artist, and now I get to read him talk about how great I am. But yeah, like in the early interviews, he would say that Stan Lee was a sweetheart, and then not so much in the later interview.
Well, the longer you go, the less you got to rely on people for, I don't know, more gigs or something, right?
Yeah, and that's like the industry in a nutshell. It's such a small industry, so you just have to be nice to everybody.
Yeah, but
even though this is art, so there are a lot of stories, there's a lot of resentments, and those are just kept within the industry and not said publicly. But yeah, so this is the second part of his career, which is Post-Sonja. And by that point he was in demand. Basically Heavy Metal called, Playboy called, Warren called, National Lampoon. And he was part of a new 1980s trend in comics, which was creator ownership. So when he created Gita of Alazar, he basically got a got an agent. Yeah, he got a literary agent.
Right on.
Which was very rare for the time. Like comic artists didn't get literary agents, and that literary agent only really had like novelists under his under him. Yeah, he produced Gita of Alizar in this 1984 magazine for Warren Publishing, and everybody else who produced stuff for that magazine, Warren got to keep it. But yeah, he was the only one that got to keep his creation, which is really good because eventually Harris bought the Warren stuff, and he got to keep Gita of Alizar. And then it went through over the last several years. It's gone through many publishers, and it's gone through many international publishers as well.
That's great.
So yeah, these are the few images I can show because yeah, everything implicit in the Red Sonja comics with like sex and violence is explicit in Gita of Alizar. It is a straight up porn comic, and like I can't show many pages from this because she's naked through most of it.
Now, when you say it's a porn comic, are we talking like you are seeing sex acts, or is it just like there's a lot of nudity because who cares? This is a magazine for adults.
Yeah, lots of sex. Like
Oh,
I
okay.
mean, and it's played for laughs, like
you know, and
it,
like this, and
it's
yeah.
ridiculous though. Like there's she orgasms to her sword. Like yeah, it's yeah, and
I think
and there's
Kentaro Miura got that for Berserk. He
I
took
was
it.
gonna
That's where he
say.
got the inspiration from.
Yep.
and it's easy to find online. I'm not going to show it on the show, but like yeah, you could find that. Like every now and then you see someone post like, "What the hell is this?" Like
yeah, the past was a wild time. We forget that. We're currently we're in a apparently a very low point of the public's appetite for sexuality. But the
yeah.
80s, they were all about it.
Yeah, there's an entire conversation about how sexless movies are nowadays. Where like, which the Marvel movies are kind of at the forefront of that, because like all the movies we saw growing up, there would always be a sex scene or at least somebody making out, some sort of love story.
Yep.
You look at all the Marvel movies, which set the tone for most of the blockbusters that are coming out now, and
that's true. Yeah,
they're like in the Marvel movies, there's no romantic relationships basically, and if there is, it's very chaste.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's like a scene and then hard cut to back to the story. Yeah.
I mean, we're of a generation where we would watch movies with our parents, and then there'd be the sex scene coming up, and everybody in the room is awkward. But this new generation doesn't have to deal with that.
To be young.
Oh, so yeah, here's one example of her like orgasming to the to the sword. So yeah, he around this time he also created co-created Danger Rangerette with Ted Manns. So this was the last time he worked with a writer. Everything after this he wrote for himself. But yeah, it started off as a regular in National Lampoon magazine.
Oh, okay.
And then it moved over to High Times magazine, which he doesn't know why. He just got a call from Ted Manns one day and said, "Yeah, we're moving the strip over to High Times," and like who knows why.
Huh.
A weird little factoid about this. He shot a short skit of Danger Rangerette with his muse Linda Barrel, and it almost made it onto Saturday Night Live. Like they shot it specifically for Saturday Night Live, but it never made it to air. So I mean, this thing exists somewhere.
Cowards. And this is more. It doesn't look. It looks suggestive, but not explicit.
Yeah. I mean, it's. Okay. I haven't actually read much of this, but yeah, it doesn't look. I mean, I don't think they were getting too hardcore in National Lampoon magazine. But on the other hand,
maybe that's why they moved to High Times. Oh,
for Playboy magazine, he had Moonshine McJugs.
Chesty LaRue was already taken.
So this was like a kind of a takeoff or inspired by Al Cap's Little Abner. Which are you guys familiar with Little Abner at all? Because I'm not.
Yeah, I know Little Abner.
Is that the one where it's like he's clearly beating his wife? It's the guy with the hat down over his eyes, and he's clearly a drunk, abusive guy.
I have a book over there, but I won't. I'm not.
You have a Little Abner book? Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. Sonja may have made him a name creator, but Yeah, and it changed his life forever. But he thinks that this strip was the one that he considers the high point of his career. It
What?
was, yeah. Well, it had the widest circulation, and it was all by him. Sonya
Oh,
was like
okay.
written by somebody else, and yeah, it was very challenging but very enjoyable. Hefner always wanted to be a cartoonist, so yeah, that's why he was always big on having strips in his in Playboy.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and so these are some of the few Moonshine McJugs that I could find that didn't have any nudity. And yeah, these are the color guides, I believe, that were sold on Heritage auctions, which I believe might have been sold by him.
Again, right on. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope so.
So yeah, he did Heavy Metal Magazine. He did Lan,
Right on.
which he didn't have the most fun with. He had to do them in 8-page chapters.
Oh.
And the reason for that was that they were all going to be collected in a 48-page album, which was good for like the European market. He wasn't really feeling it, but I think it eventually caught on as it got a little more comedic with like a second volume. And again, this is like the only image I can show because I mean, she's like naked through like the entire thing.
Only image you can show from anything from heavy metal.
Yeah, it fit right in. But yeah, this is him cosplaying with Linda Barrel. Which is
Wow.
yeah, I mean he cosplayed all his characters, and Linda Barrel played all his characters throughout the 80s.
He's doing the Grant Morrison comics magician thing before Morrison is even on the scene.
Yeah, and actually, like she played Moonshine McJugs in something.
Dang.
So, and he played this little. There's this little creeper in the background. He played that dude. So he, in all his creations, he always added a character for him, and Linda Barrel usually played somebody. So yeah, in 1989, he returned to mainstream comics. So this was his like one foray outside of porn comics for a bit before he went back. It only went for 4 issues. I don't think it was a success. It was for Comico. So Diana Schutz and Bob Schreck hired him. He wanted to call it Dread Spawn or Green Spawn or just Spawn.
Oh.
But and this was 1989, like 3 years before Spawn. But yeah, Diana Schutz, like he named the character Ribbit, and Diana Schutz said, "No, let's name it after your main character. Let's name it Ribbit," which she regretted. He didn't want that to happen, but she made that happen, and she years later said that it was probably a mistake.
Who would have thought Comico makes the wrong call on something?
yeah, that's an interesting history there. When I read this, I found it interesting, the hair. And in an interview, he commented that he was in Florence and he saw the statue of David, and he loved the look of the hair. And he basically said that the next heroine he creates would have that look.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
It's a very interesting, weird look, and you should see the comic because, like, yeah, it does have a solid look at some points, like a statue.
Oh, okay.
But okay, so he went to Fantagraphics, and Fantagraphics was dying around then. And in order to keep Fantagraphics afloat, they went into porn comics. And so he did like 6 issues of something called the Erotic Works of Frank Thorne, which republished all that stuff, like Moonshine McJugs and Danger Rangerette, and then also at Fantagraphics, he did a comic called The Devil's Angel and Iron Devil. And on the back, there was some controversy with this comic, and so on the back, he cosplayed, I guess, as himself, like a wanted poster, because yeah, some things happened with this comic. There's an Oklahoma comic shop, like some police officers came in and arrested the comic shop owner for selling child pornography, which was absolutely ridiculous because it was basically in the 90s. There was this culture war of like against youth corrupting media, rap music and all that, and there's this notion that all comics are for kids, and so if you have like dirty stuff in a comic, that's for kids and you're selling child pornography. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, the charges were completely dropped, nothing came of it, but yeah, it was in the headlines for a bit.
Satanic panic strikes again.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty bad. But that's pretty much the end of his comics work. He was done with comics after that, and for the last several years, he did illustration work, and he worked at Playboy for just doing one-page gag strips.
Oh, so he didn't like retire or anything.
I think around 2012 was when things started to go a little bit downhill, and so he was doing these like extremely large painting reproductions of his older work.
Oh.
So I mean, he was doing art right up until he died. I think he did. Well, I think one of his sons died, and then he had difficulty doing any art for a good while after that.
I'll bet. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he came back to it. But yeah, it's interesting because in that last interview he did, he expressed some annoyances at how Hugh Hefner was micromanaging these strips towards the end.
Two 90-year-old men griping at each other.
Yeah, but then I mean, Playboy isn't what it used to be. I think they stopped doing comic strips when Hefner died. But yeah, I mean that was basically his entire comics career. Okay, so yeah, I have to say, it is really cool that Dynamite did these art editions, artist editions. That term is owned by IDW, so this is an art edition.
Okay.
But this is the only like 3-volume set of artist editions. Everything else out there is just a single volume. And so yeah, although we were trashing Dynamite earlier for that terrible coloring, I am so thankful that they did these 3 volumes and that they put them up on Kindle.
Yeah, putting them up on Kindle is great. These are the only ones they put on Kindle?
Yeah, just the 3 volumes. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they have any other art editions other than like they've had the Red Sonja license for like 20 years.
They have, I want to say they have Jose Gonzalez for.
Oh right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For Vampirella.
Yeah, Vampirella. Thank you. Yeah, put those up too.
So yeah, did you guys get a chance to read Red Sonja #1?
Yes.
Reading, yeah, the first issue.
Oh, sorry, this is Marvel
not...
feature. What'd you say, Colin?
No, I read Red Sonja #1, not the Marvel feature.
Oh man, the Marvel feature,
the unicorn
Red
story.
Yeah, Red Sonja #1 is one of my favorites, but the Marvel feature stuff I actually like a lot more than the regular Red Sonja. What about you, Taylor?
Yes, I did read them both, although I have to admit the unicorn stuff didn't quite stick with me.
Hey, before you say anything.
I'm not saying it's bad. It's just I was probably not in the right headspace to take it all in. I spent a week and a half trying to get this drawing correct. I was preoccupied.
Yeah, so we were talking earlier about yeah, I mean, wow. Look at how packed these panels are.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
there's just
something like that.
So this was Bruce Jones writing, and he wrote very full stories compared to Roy Thomas. The Roy Thomas stuff, there's more breathing room. Those are maybe 6 panels max, the Roy Thomas stuff, but this is just, there's just so much story that, and just so much text. How much of the page is the text taking up? Like, like a third of this?
Right away I noticed that he averages no more than 2 word balloons per panel, and if he does add more to one, he takes away from another, so the average is 2.
Oh, that's interesting.
If you take the first page, there's 2 in the first one, 1 in the second, 1 in the third, and then 2 again, then 1 again, but never more than 2. Yeah, and in that corner panel there's 4, but technically he's taking it away from the last panel and the other panels too. I think script wise, I'm just speculating, but Bruce Jones may have said, okay, well, I'm going to use 2 or 3 pages to type out what happens on one page, and it should like he's probably had some kind of formula of no more than 2 word balloons per panel, which would make sense too. If it's 2 characters talking, that's just 2 word balloons.
Interesting. Yeah, I like the good mix going on here where it seems like every page he's got a mix of types of panels. He's got the thick panel border, he's got the open panel, and yeah, he's got the bordered panel here. Yeah. A lot of variety.
Yeah, he uses like structured panels and to kind of group them together almost to tie. I want to say it's kind of like scenes together. Like you should be thinking of like those on the left-hand side, the black border ones. You should be thinking of all of these in quick succession.
It's a good way of controlling the
Yeah.
controlling the flow of information a little bit as isolated scenes. But I mean, yeah, there's just so much going on here. In this page on the right, like she enters the pub, she gets a drink, she has a conversation with the waitress. Somebody tells her your horse has been stolen, and then she leaves all in one page, and we even get an anchor image at the bottom. Like,
Wow. Yeah.
so
Yeah, that like bleeds out of the contained 4 purposefully.
And so yeah, he was lettering this as well, and yeah, the
You'd
lettering
have
is
to,
just
right?
gorgeous.
With so much dialogue, you'd have to like, well, I can't leave this up to anybody else.
Yeah, and this wasn't done Marvel method. This was done full script, because that's the only way, I guess. If he was going to be the letterer, he got the
Oh,
script and he
yeah.
just did it all in one go, because otherwise he would have to do the pencils, send them in. The writer would have to do the dialogue, then the letterer would have to do it, and then get the inker to do it. But if it's full script, then he can do it all.
Woof. Great use of the whole page length panel.
Yes, I love this tall panel.
Yeah, it's so rare that you get a great use of, it's so skinny, but it's taken the whole thing, and it's I often find it's great for top-down stuff, but how often does that come up?
Yeah. He's being really clever with how to use this stuff, considering just how much he has to put on every page. And to be honest, I like these pages better than the Roy Thomas stuff. And the Roy Thomas stuff, I guess the layouts aren't as clever, probably because you get the sense that this was every page was a puzzle, and he had to be clever. But with the Roy Thomas stuff, I find, Roy Thomas and Clara Noto, with that stuff, the page layouts weren't as clever, I guess, because he wasn't so confined. But yeah, I mean, these pages just really excite me. Like here's an L-shaped panel again, which there's a lot of that coming up.
Yes, there are.
I mean, look at this page with a montage going on, and during some big battle. This page is so fun.
Yeah, I like his montage pages. I'm only referencing from Red Sonja #1 though. The unicorn story.
On the left-hand page, that's kind of a larger L-shape sequence, and it's broken a bit, but the kind of like layering of, because it's definitely like a zoom in, and it's used so well to when he uses it like this to kind of zoom in on what's going on here. What's this scene all about?
Yeah. I mean, I love how he has characters popping into other panels. Apparently,
Mhm.
Stan Lee did not like stuff like this, and so
What?
this is the kind of thing that like you wouldn't normally be able to get away with. Yeah, he was against, like his whole thing was just tell the story. Don't be fancy. Don't like. And breaking panel borders was kind of a no-no.
Yeah, I get that. It's especially if it's coming from Stan, he might be thinking, no, how are the kids going to follow this?
Yeah, lots of like full body poses, which just looks so good.
Yeah, full body. Like exactly how, I don't know, it now that you've pointed it out, it does seem rare for an artist to put so much of the figure of the character's figure on so many pages.
Yeah, I mean, here's like anchor images are a thing of the 90s,
Yeah.
but how many artists were doing stuff like this in the 70s? Like this
Not a
page
lot.
right here.
I'd love to-
Like was Neil Adams doing stuff like this? Maybe. I think there was a lot of like characters just popping out of the page. I think maybe Neil Adams was popularizing some of this stuff, but yeah, I'm not sure. Okay, let's go to. So yeah, here's an L shape and an L shape, and yeah, and like every issue he had to design a whole new world. And also take note of the fact how full these pages are.
Yes.
He doesn't seem to like negative space. In fact, usually the only bit of negative space is just like if Red Sonja's body, basically. Although like these are poor examples because she's lit there, but yeah. Some more L-shaped panels, which you see less and less of these L-shaped panels in the Claranoto Roy Thomas stuff.
That's a great use of an L-shaped panel, though.
Oh yeah,
The fall. That's great.
and there's a new thing right there where like it's like a rounded blacked out border.
You're right, though. There is a lot going on so often. He seems to just refuse to drop a background. Did either of you find it kind of tough to read at times?
Not so much. So, I mean, for me, it's kind of the opposite. I think the more panels you add, the more bang for your buck. I'm very, I guess you could say, lifelongly. I've been price conscious of the comics that I buy, and if you waste a page on like just a general, previously in synopsis or something like that, that's our automatic ding. So, reading this kind of stuff, I just love to. The thing is, the drawings themselves are really good. The faces are perfect. The figure work is great. There's lots of nice depth and perspective in each panel. So yeah, when you're overloading the information like that, as long as it's each picture is clear and each picture is very competently drawn, then like I'm there for it. But there are artists. I mean, I won't get into it, but I was just talking to Eric the other day about this one comic where it was just so overworked, like to the top, over inked, over detailed, over colored, over saturated, over everything. But in this case, no, it works.
Okay.
So I like this where you have like a 6-panel grid here, and he always finds a way to make the basic kind of techniques look new and interesting.
Yeah.
Because you have they're basically like a simple dead line connecting, and then every second panel has kind of a white border around it, which is and then we get like as soon as they go in the tent, that grouping is isolated.
Mm-hmm.
So lots of smart thinking when it comes to like isolating like segments of scenes together and finding clever ways of doing it.
Yeah, because he's not too concerned with leading your eye around the panel or the page. He really expects you to know. How like he seems he expects how a comic works. Let's go. But the use of okay, but you have to understand why these are together is really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, like, this page on the left is a good example of that, because it's you start off one panel and then move in kind of unusual eye path.
Mm-hmm. But at the same time, like her moving into that top right hand panel, it does let you know. Oh that is where you would go, right? He's not holding your hand, but he's also not completely disorganized.
Well, I mean, and also like it's my firm belief that the letterer has so much control over where the eye goes. Like the artist can do a whole bunch of wacky stuff, and the letterer can control the flow of the page. Which that's something the comic I'm working on right now is using a circular motif, and so it's relying heavily on the letterer guiding the reader in a certain way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think the letterer is so important with stuff like that.
Which
This is sorry, which
he's lettering at this point.
oh yeah, he was lettering.
Okay, yeah.
He's lettering every issue. So yeah, this issue actually, I loved seeing her in the rain with this like hood, and we try to do art for every podcast or every episode of this, but I couldn't get one done this week. I did do a bunch of sketches, and I was going to specifically do something inspired by this with her in this cloak in the rain, because I just love this imagery so much.
Yeah, it's hard to get. I think it was Bill Watterson from in a Calvin and Hobbes 10th anniversary book saying it's really hard to get atmosphere with just pen and ink, but boy, when it comes together, it really works. And this is really atmospheric with just black lines.
I just felt this so much, and
yeah,
and he's lettering this stuff, and he's just got such a talent for different fonts as well. Like just the amount of skills and knowledge he had in all aspects of making comics, it's just so impressive. So yeah, let's just jump ahead here. And so yeah, this is interesting because yeah, again, like he's segmenting things off. This gets a thick panel border, this gets a thin one, and then this we get rounded panels.
Mm-hmm.
On this page we get all three of those, and there's only 3 panels. So here you can tell this one was written by Roy Thomas, because this was a crossover with Conan. So you can tell how much more open these panels are, or these pages are.
Yeah, feels a lot more like a Marvel 70s comic.
Obviously, that was, well, I say obviously, but that was likely an editorial mandate to kind of take him out of his own element. All those, he's like, stop having characters break panel borders, stop doing those L-shaped panels, just draw the damn thing with a regular grid.
Oh no. It was the difference in writers. Bruce Jones's scripts were just so packed. There was just so much information on every page, and you just do what you got to do. Whereas here, Roy Thomas is writing this one, and there's more room to breathe. It's here's a 3-panel page, and here's a 5-panel page. Whereas before we were looking at pages with 8 and 9 panels with
yeah, that's right.
Which I really did like those pages. It forced him to be very inventive. These pages are like expertly done. They're beautiful, but they're not as inventive to me, I guess. It doesn't excite me in the same way, which, man, he must have been so overworked with those early pages. So I'm happy he got a breather here, but you have to bleed on the page.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if did you find anything about why they switched writers?
Well, I think Roy Thomas wanted to do it, but he was just so busy, and he was the editor of this book because he was doing all the sword and sorcery stuff. He was just really busy with Conan, and he had moved to Los Angeles, so he's a little further away. Yeah, he just didn't have time for the book, so so he gave it to Bruce Jones, which was always supposed to be temporary. And then the only reason he wrote these 2 issues was because they were crossovers with Conan, the Conan books. So basically, it was a 4-parter, and he wrote all 4 parts. But then when it was time for Sonja #1, he still didn't have time, so he got his friend in Los Angeles, Clara Noto, to help out. But yeah, he also had a friend in New York, Ed Summer, do the plot. But I mean, yeah, this is one of my favorite pages of the entire thing. Just look at how beautifully designed this page is.
I liked it.
Like, yeah, this comic is fantastic.
Yeah.
Look at how they this horse creature is introduced and they're hunting it, and then it's suddenly revealed, this huge reveal on this page with the unicorn. It's just so well done. And again, Marvel artists weren't really allowed to break panel borders like this, but I mean that feels like big. And all throughout this, whenever they show the horn is always breaking the panel border because it's just so important to the story, and it's just so big, and it can't even be contained in panels.
Yeah, that's a great use of space for storytelling. Not just first the reveal, because it is it's overlaid with a surprised face of, dang, it's a unicorn, and then, as you say, that it can't be contained. It forces you to pay attention to this thing that just seems to exist outside of the confines of a comic.
Yeah. So there's a film language for montage. There's a specific way when you're doing film and you want to do a montage, which was invented by a Soviet film director, Sergei Eisenstein. I think he's the godfather of the montage, which when we think of film montages, we think of the Rocky training sequences, and I think of that song from Team America. But there is a language in comics for creating a montage, I think. And I don't know if this is universally accepted, but this right here is a prime example of showing time passing. Yeah, it's basically creating a collage to have that montage go on.
Yeah, moment to moment. There's no separation of them.
There's an issue of my creator-owned comic that's coming up where the entire issue is the character is experiencing time faster than everybody else. And so my solution for that was to do most of the issue as collages, because just like time is moving too quickly, and it's moving faster than even the panel, like the panel borders. Like panel borders are time, basically. Like the gutter space in between is time passing.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's no gutter space, it's just like it feels like time is just moving at light speed.
Yeah, it's a great use of, especially because you see things like her hair. It's not quite melding into other versions of her, but it's very like her full figure in the kind of center of that panel, and then her profile right next to and underneath it. It's
Yeah.
like the hair leads you around, right? You're following her, you're following the unicorn, you're following all of it through time. It's a great melding. Yeah, I'll say melding of images.
Yeah, and it's great that like he takes out all the detail of her hair here,
Mhm.
because it really sticks out. I like that her hair looks like it's fire. Like that's how you would draw fire, basically, is Red Sonja's hair.
Yeah.
And, it's just like right here, like it's just such good imagery as a fiery redhead.
Yeah. That's a great example of it, yeah.
Okay. Do you notice that his line is a little shaky? Like he doesn't
Shaky.
have. Let me find a good example of that. Where is a good example? Like right here. Like it's not the most confident line I've seen. Like there's some imperfections to these lines, which I really like. I like seeing imperfections. It feels like, I don't know. It feels like handmade.
Might be a little bit of just space filling too. You know, he's just putting the finishing touches on it and just moving on to the next one.
Oh no, but like, and this is consistent. This is something I've noticed all throughout. Is just like he doesn't have a perfect line when inking, and that's not a knock on him. I actually like it. I like seeing imperfect lines. It doesn't feel like a machine is making this.
Yeah, now that you're pointing it out, I don't think I clocked it, but yeah, you're right. There is some.
Like look at how squiggly it is up here.
Yeah, yeah. It's it gets away from him. It's the final inks. Can't go back and fix it. Just keep moving.
Yeah. Actually, I didn't get a chance to look at the covers. I wanted to point out something funny I noticed. These are all the Marvel feature covers, and in every single cover, she's got a weapon in each hand.
Oh, that's funny.
Badass.
Oh, and here I want. This is what I was talking about earlier, where this cover was two pieces basically that were layered. This was layered into the background.
Oh, okay.
That was their Photoshop back then. They didn't have Photoshop, but they still layered stuff.
Yeah, like on Mylar or whatever that's called.
Yeah, I guess they just
Vellum?
Vellum.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, they just like overlaid one on top of the other. But yeah, every one of these Marvel features, she has a weapon in each hand.
Really drives home what she's about. Yeah. She's not defending. She attacks. She is
And
ready to go.
here's the origin of the name Gita, which although
Oh,
he's got
yeah.
two T's in it, but yeah, right here is these cool covers, which he loses the double weapon motif at this point. Well, not always. But yeah, and then by the time we get to like volume 3, like these pages, I don't know if he's running out of steam, but well, I'm just saying the layouts aren't as exciting to me, but he's just doing so much work on every
Yeah.
page. Now, the series was bi-monthly, and he was touring around doing the Sonya and Wizard show. Yeah, I mean, the layouts are a little more basic at this point. Yeah, again, not as exciting to me.
It does feel like he's kind of doing more not taking chances, but definitely doing kind of little flexes within the more basic panel design. But you're right, yeah, it's not as complex as volume 1 stuff.
Yeah, going back to like issue 1, I love seeing stuff like this. Like he had more tears going on here, but it looked at it and thought maybe that's a little too much and decided to white it out. It's always fun to see the history, the historical decisions here. And you would often see like you would often see he said every time he like would change some of the dialogue or rewrite it a bit, Roy Thomas would catch him, and it would every single time it would get fixed. But yeah, you can see here this is his work, and then this is obviously somebody else's writing over top this whiteout. It's two different fonts going on there, basically.
Yeah.
I guess that's about it. I would recommend people check this out on Kindle or go out and buy the actual artist editions. Having read through all these, although the Red Sonja, the first issue, is one of my favorites, the rest of them I'm not as into so much. I'm just so excited by the Marvel feature stuff and the exciting layouts that, like, if I were to buy any of the artist editions, it would definitely be the volume 1. So yeah, I might have to track that down one day.
I gotta say, I liked a lot of what I saw in the third one. There's it's not as flashy, but I did appreciate a lot of the care that went into the rendering of stuff in by the third volume. He's really putting out just like really solid figure work that I don't know. I think a lot of artists, aspiring artists watching this might gain some insights from.
He was definitely a complete artist, I would say.
Yeah.
He could do it all, and he did it all, and yeah.
Yeah, and not to knock this. So this is volume 3. Not to knock this later stuff, because some of these pages are really exciting. Like look at this page with her, with the dagger and the sword like popping out of frame.
Yeah, it's kind of like he's if he's gonna get locked into a structure, okay, well then I'm gonna show you that I'm still what I got going on, even still. Did not get to that centaur yet, though. That's real upsetting. Never thought of it as the human torso as neck.
Yeah,
that's the surprise.
Okay, so shall we move on to so you guys got a chance to do some art for the show?
Yeah, I still have to color mine. I'm just going to take a red Copic marker to it. There'll be a higher resolution image on the screen, but it's a very simple shot there.
That's badass, man. That is badass.
So you did that. Took you a couple hours doing that today?
Yeah, two exactly.
Which
2 hours
for the blacks, the lines.
I use Pigmas, and I have one brush pen, which is like one of those Japanese ones.
Oh, the little black.
No. It's a longer one. It's got a real thick end to it. I'll show you a picture of it.
Oh, okay, yeah. It looks great. Especially the stippling for the armor. The armor I wasn't sure how I was going to do.
Yeah, I kind of just doing the scale circles, and then shading underneath. There's like, the thing is, the faster I'm drawing or having to draw, like the closer these deadlines get. Because I mean, for anybody watching, we just did like 2 or 3 podcasts within the span of like 2 weeks. So in that time, obviously we've got to work and do all the other stuff too, like live life essentially. So I've been the crunch time to pull off these drawings is shorter and shorter. So today I took the afternoon to do it. And but your mind starts to think in certain ways to try to make it look interesting, the simpler with the simpler layouts. So I experimented with textures and stuff like that too.
Nice.
I mean, if I had another hour, I'd throw a background in there, stuff, maybe some snowfall or something like that. Like, my mind was starting to already put those things together, but I had to do the episode in 10 minutes. So, yeah.
So what about you, Taylor?
So this took forever. I drew, man, I filled a couple of pages, just trying to get this this pose down, because I really wanted to give it some action. That's one of the things I really took away from Frank's work, is just she is always in motion. And as we've discussed in the past, Eric has successfully bullied me into learning to do my own colors again. So I tried to cast my mind back to the color theory class that I nearly flunked, and I don't know that it really turned out color wise, but I don't know. Overall, I think it kind of worked.
So this
Oh,
was watercolor pencils you've been using?
Yeah. I'm sticking with the watercolor pencils right now, just because feels a little more controllable. But I don't know.
When are you gonna move to straight up watercolors?
Ooh, that seems like a big investment. I might get Copics first.
Oh, what? Copics are way more expensive. What are you
I
talking about?
know, but they feel more.
They're more controllable.
Yeah, exactly. Watercolor on its own, man. I don't know. Right now, I'm taking my little water brush and kind of taking bits off of the exposed lead from the pencil and laying it down if I need a thicker concentration.
Oh man, you gotta dive into the deep end, man. You need to. Watercolors are cheap. Go
Isn't this
get
enough? Isn't this deep?
This is impressive for the fact that, like, I swear, like a month or two ago, you said you would never do color.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. I had sworn it off. I just done so poorly in the past with it, but bullying works, kids. Bullying works.
Well, I mean, yeah, I'm just impressed that you're doing it. You're gonna get better with each piece.
That's the hope. Yeah.
Me, I had hoped to get one done. I did a bunch of sketches, but I'm drawing issue 5 of my creator-owned book, which is a comic that hasn't been announced yet. It's gonna be announced very soon, though. But it's coming out early next year, and this is the most ambitious script I've ever gotten. Every issue is an experiment, and figuring this issue out is a puzzle, and it's been taking up a lot of time. Yeah, issue 5 will be, I guess, the last issue in the first trade, and yeah, we're going out with a bang. This is like the first script I've ever received from a writer that has gotten me misty-eyed at the end of it. It is just so good. If I can pull it off, it's I think it could be something special, because, like, man, it's such a good script. But if anybody's watching this from the future and reading that issue 5, yeah, you'll probably know what I'm talking about when I said that this was really challenging. This is taking a lot out of me. But doing this show is taking a lot out of me as well. This show has been weekly, coming out weekly on YouTube for a bit, and I think we're gonna have to move it to bi-weekly, because man, I put so much work into this show, and it's it's a lot of work.
It's a grind, yeah. So that's it for today, everybody. Thanks for watching, and I'll tell you what next episode's about, but who knows what order you're going to watch this in. So just don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. We do like to do drawings for every episode, so if you want to do a Red Sonja drawing or any of the Frank Thorne's create-your-own characters, post it in the comments below. We'd love to see it. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
So yeah, the first, so it was Marvel Feature Presents that. Do you hear that?
Yeah.
That's Leia trying to get inside. Okay.
I hope this stays in the video.
We don't give our cat not catnip at all. She's just never gave us any problems. We don't have to bribe her or appease her in any way.
Sphinx cats are like dogs. They're really needy.